Yes, if this snow keeps up, I'm gonna have to get that skidoo running, which is a fair amount of junk moving out of the way. But there's enough snow to drive the skidoo to see how it works, but there's not enough snow to have fun. You have to have, with those old machines, you have to have the snow um, a foot to 4 feet deep. It's plenty cold out. I am kind of caught up out here right now. The next bunch of activity I do is starting a new area, sort of. But I got the tail lights back on, and I was quite fortunate when I did this one, where I heated it up and welded on that broken stud or broken bolt, because I wasn't thinking clearly enough. I should have just tried, focused a little more and just got one blob there and then turned off the torch. I stayed there a little too long, but no harm. It didn't melt through. There was no hole, but it did droop it a little bit. And I had to, anyway, I got this sanded down a little finer and a coat of paint on it. And on this side, see, originally the bumper's supposed to sit a little bit lower than this. This is supposed to be below that chrome. But mine, the bumper's bent in the brackets and the bumper's bent. It is kind of where it is, but good enough for me for now, for sure. But yes, I got the taillights back together and they both work. I don't have it hooked up to the battery charger right now, so I can't show that. But the yeah, it's a good idea to get broken bolts out by welding on them, because the heat goes through and it goes out of the bolt into the, we'll say, nut, and that kind of breaks up the threads a little bit and the rust. Like in proper when you unstick something, you heat the nut up because it expands and the bolt stays cold. You don't keep the heat there long enough for the heat to go through to the bolt if you can help it. But if you heat the nut up and work the bolt, that's about as loose as you can get. But if most of the time the nut is hidden and you only have the bolt, so if you heat the bolt up and the heat goes through, then you try, if you do that 2 or 3 times, quite often it'll loosen up the threads enough that you can get it out. But when you have something literally broken off and you weld a little bump on it like an exhaust stud, that's the heads are always rotted off, and that's the only way you can get them out, is just to reach up there. And that's where the MIG welder comes in super handy, because the torch is a bugger in bad spots to get at. But you just weld up a bump and then do any way you can, like vice grips, and work it back and forth. And quite often you break the bump off and then you do it again. After about the third time, you usually get that little stud out with the threads. And, the same thing goes with all this kind of stuff. But anyway, it was, yeah, it's quite cold out here. It's like 25 degrees. But anyway, I managed to I got this all sanded back smooth. And a little, I didn't mix up the paint in the spray gun. I just put it on a little bit with the brush and then grabbed my roller and gave it a once over. And I used that whole little quart of that $12 paint. But anyway, yeah. Yep. Yeah, she looks pretty good. I don't know if I want to paint too much more of the white or not. I'm not in too much of a hurry as I get ideas or get up to it, but I have my hands full fixing the inner fenders and the trunk for the next month or so. So anyway, but I like the bumper pointing forward a lot better. And if I had a bunch of 2 1/4, 2.5 inch muffler pipe that had some bends in it, I'd run another dual exhaust on it because the car's way too quiet. And I put a red cherry bomb on it, thinking straight through. You can see right through it, thinking that the car was going to be loud, and it isn't. It's quiet as it can be. So I'm if I run another exhaust back with another muffler, maybe the dual exhaust might make it a little bit louder. But that's not today. That's in the future. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was lucky with the tail light. It didn't melt a hole. It just drooped it, and I reached up with the grinder and just touched it up a little bit so the lens would go in. And anyway, up at the store, I was able to buy new Phillips screws that were identical to these old ones. Exact same thing, just like a little box of them. So anyway, I put new ones in, but I put some extra runny green Loctite on the threads because I didn't want to tighten the screws too tight. So, and I know they'd rattle out, and I didn't want to snug them any more than just finger tight. So I put a little Loctite on them to keep them from rattling out. So anyway, I'm going to go back in the house. You guys have a good day. See you later.